uplifting Yuri Broffenbrenner's ecological systems theory model in human development. Broffenbrenner states that the people that are most closest to a child are their families, are their community members, and are educators.
Welcome back to another episode of Shifting Schools. Here's a question for you. How often do you stop to think about the impact a single educator or community member has had on your life as a child? Maybe it was someone who saw potential in you before you did, or someone who quietly made your day better when things were tough. Hold on to that memory, because today's episode is all about how those connections, those purposeful, meaningful relationships, can transform lives, communities, and even the way we view education itself. In this episode, we dive into how can we move beyond labels in education to truly understand and connect with every student's unique story. The power of community building is leveling the playing field for students, especially those who might not even realize the challenges they face. And finally, why investing time in relationships isn't just nice to have, it's the cornerstone of long-term success in schools and beyond. Our guest today is Marcela Andres, a dynamic leader and the president and CEO of Designed Engagement, a Latina-owned educational consulting company dedicated to creating culturally responsive and impactful programs. Marcela brings a wealth of experience from her roots as a bilingual educator in Mexico to founding and leading projects that have redefined family engagement and community partnerships in education. Her journey from poverty to prosperity, her Harvard education, and her commitment to equity makes her story one that will inspire and motivate you. Oh, and we're also excited to spotlight her new book, Purposeful Educator Connections, which combines research, lived experience, and storytelling to remind us all why relationships are the foundation of meaningful education. Now, before we jump into today's episode, here is a quick word from today's show sponsor. Shifting Schools is excited to be sponsored by Neulight.io. Their platform is designed to simplify MTSS frameworks for personalized student support. Built by leading experts, Neulight focuses on getting educators the answers they need fast. Which students need which levels of support? With simple data collection and insightful analytics powered by AI, Neulight's platform provides actionable solutions to support your students effectively. Try it for free at Neulight.io. That's Neulight.io. Check the link in the show notes to learn more.
Shifting Schools and Crayola believe that creative teaching helps students become future ready. Join Matthew McConaughey, Ada Limon, Mo Willems, and 7 million students around the globe for Crayola Creativity Week, January 27th through February 2nd, 2025. Sign up for access to free learning resources, celebrity videos, daily giveaways, and more at Crayola.com/creativityweek.
And now, let's get into this insightful conversation with Marcela Andres.
Hi, folks. We are here talking about something that I know is top of mind, I think, for everybody in education right now, and that's connections. Marcela, you come at connections a little bit differently, and I'd love to start off just by quoting a line from the introduction to your book. So on page 6, you write, quote, "Educators play a special role in the life of children and can have a profound impact in their lives. And admittedly, this impact can be positive or negative if an educator is not equipped with the tools, talents, and resources they need in the classroom." Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about how your book, Purposeful Educator Connections, helps us better understand that opportunity that we have. And we have an opportunity not just for the life of an individual student, but really at a societal level.
Thank you, Trisha. Yes. And thank you so much again for having me with y'all. I am excited and grateful. And to everyone listening for your time. In the book, also, there's a graphic that's going to really help ground what I'm going to say. So check out the book. But in essence, it has to do with the positionality of where an educator falls in the life of a child. And so uplifting Yuri Broffenbrenner's ecological systems theory model in human development, Broffenbrenner states that the people that are most closest to a child are their families, are their community members, and are educators. That means that their positionality is in a very intimate space. He refers to this as the microsystem. And what I mean by that quote is if you are in somebody's most intimate space, that means that you have a very special position, a very special honor to really impact the life of a child. And educators are that. They're special individuals, special human beings that can significantly change the trajectory of a child. And I can testify that from research, but also my lived experience.
Again, I think that will resonate strongly with our audience. I think it's very common at an educational conference, people will ask you to just stop, reflect, who's an educator that had a very profound positive impact, or who's an educator who had a detrimental, very negative impact. And I find often people can immediately recall. It's not like, oh, let me think about it for 5 minutes. It's like something comes to mind right away. And I really appreciate that your book kind of weaves in your personal story. Again, I think reminding us we all have these narratives, and it's so important, even in a career path like being a teacher where you've got a million things you're juggling at once. Stop, pause, reflect on those stories. As a longtime high school educator, I always felt like I had a slightly better spot than my wife who taught primary, in that my students were able to get in touch with me just that first year in college or university or the first job. And really, I think they could make that connection of the impact much faster than, maybe a 6-year-old.
Right.
But again, just about a month ago, my wife heard back from someone who she taught in first grade who's now in university, right? And I think all of us have these stories. So I'm wondering, in the editing process, how important it was for you to make sure it wasn't just research, it wasn't just theory, but it was also narrative.
It was absolutely important. Researcher in training. And so I really appreciate deep research and quantitative and qualitative methods and, really dense papers that have taken, hours and hours of investment. And I also deeply appreciate storytelling. And when I wrote the book, I wanted to make sure that there was research that really was the foundation of the book, but I wanted to uplift the principles through storytelling. And for me, it was really the codification of my lived experience coupled with research. And so throughout every single chapter, you'll get real stories from me that uplift every single principle. And I just wanted to connect with everyone and every educator with stories.
Well, that definitely, I feel like, goal accomplished there. When you're talking about your lived experience, your career is really unique. Currently you're a CEO and an educational leader. You've got a really kind of cool perspective on what community building is all about, because your livelihood kind of depends on being a community builder.
Educators, are you searching for a new space to connect, collaborate, and grow? Well, Camp Shifting Schools is your new home. With the decline of X, formerly Twitter, we're here to offer a safe, welcoming community where you can join other passionate teachers. Take part in free courses, webinars, and live AMA sessions to evaluate your practice. Ready to join the conversation? Head over to camp.shiftingschools.com and become part of the camp community today. Learning and connecting awaits.
Your book and, of course, our podcast talk a lot about the reality that, school was never just about academics. Sometimes that's the least interesting aspect for a student. But it feels like in today's world, we really get that at a new level. It can no longer just be about the academic. Can you talk a little bit more about what's influenced your approach to community building and maybe how that definition has changed over time?
Yes, absolutely. And I, for the record, do not think that it's ever been just about academics, right? School is something that is nestled as part of a larger societal system. So it's a key component of how our society works. And for me, my experience in community building is grounded in what I live to be true. Like my story is one that goes from poverty to prosperity. I was born in one of Austin's most vulnerable communities. Like literally the apartment that I grew up in was nestled in front of commercial trash cans that were unfenced. And now that's a human health and human services issue. So again, the systems that are at play here. I was a daughter of immigrants. My parents separated when I was younger. Like, I had all of these social determinants that could have made my life outcome very different than what it is today. But yes, you're right. I am the CEO of my own company. I'm a world traveler. I have a dog. I have real estate investments. Like the list can go on of everything that I've accomplished. And I testify to community building, to connections. Although I was born in poverty, I didn't know that. I did not know that I was born in poverty because I had community. I had my neighbor Graciela who spoke English, or she spoke enough English to come over to help me with my homework. I had a loving mother that would pour into me to say, you know what, I'm going to break my back to make sure that you get an education. I had family that would give me pass me down clothes to make sure that, my sisters and I had what we needed. Like I had everything. And when I think about the circumstances that I was born into, and I think about the circumstances that some of our children are being born into, they don't get to choose that. I didn't get to choose that. But my community, our communities, our people today get to choose what we do to level the playing field. And that is what community building is all about. We are called, I firmly believe, to be human beings and use our humanity to really change the circumstances of those who weren't dealt an easy hand in life.
I love that. I love that idea that you didn't know you were born into poverty. And I think that's something we forget as educators sometimes. These kids are I like to say in my training sometimes, they're doing the best they can at being 8, or they're doing the best they can at being 10. They've never been 10 before. They're doing the best they can. And they don't, most kids don't understand or don't know they're in poverty. They're living their life.
That's right.
And how often as educators do we not recognize that they're doing the best they can with the tools that they've been given in the place and time that they happen to be? I'm interested. I love the title of your book, Purposeful Educator Connections. If you were to put yourself 6 months from now, looking at this book, is out and people can purchase it, what are the conversations that you are hoping are started in schools, started between educators because of your book? What would that look like for you?
Wow, that's such a big question and a dream question. So I hope that everyone is listening, taking notes. I know that there's so many things that people invest in the schoolhouse. Here in Texas, I know that we're fixing to enter a legislative session, and there's a lot of policy, there's a lot of mandates, there's a lot of technical things that we could do, right? But I think it comes down to the human connection. Like we need to really be having conversations about how we are creating the systems that are going to foster those relationships between, children and families, between children and educators, between children and their community members, to make sure that they continue to not know that they are in poverty and that they are going to be able to realize their fullest potential. And so I just think it comes, what I would hope in my dream would be that as people pick up my book and, people hear about this, is they're like, yeah, if this was possible for Marcela, right? It is possible for any child. Like when I tell you I had some serious social determinants that were going against me, and I get the opportunity to be the CEO of a national company that one day is going to be global. I have a degree from Harvard. I'm pursuing my doctorate in public health from the University of Texas Health Houston. Like, it's mind blowing. And it doesn't have to do with, just the academics. It has to do with people who would come alongside me and would say to me, I believe in you, Marcela. Don't give up, Marcela. I still have the little turtle that one of my educators gave me when I graduated from my undergraduate, St. Edward's. And it was a little turtle that said, never give up. And she was the same teacher when I was in 5th grade, when I was struggling with the idea that my father had left, and I felt probably the most vulnerable, and I was starting to realize like my adolescent level. She was just there, and she said, you were meant for big things. Like, that's not academics. That's like pouring into me as a human being. And so I want people to uplift the connection. I want people to talk about how can we utilize the schoolhouse to deeply connect with our students, to say, I see you. I have tools to help you navigate educational systems, but I also have other resources to set you up for success.
I'm kind of wondering too, I'm glad you mentioned the Harvard University part that you've got on your bio, because I think sometimes people will hear someone say something about schools, about connections, about, it's about people. Matthew K. talks a lot about we teach people, not subjects. But I think there is still, unfortunately, a lot of pushback of like, quote unquote, that's not real world. And, you do have the research and theory piece as well. I was just reading some research about when schools have a really good peer-to-peer system, and you've invested the time in making sure students know how to do that collaborative piece of listening, supporting each other, disagreeing in a way that builds bridges, not moats. Yeah. There is an academic boost for that. And I'm wondering if you want to address just some of the skepticism, because I think sometimes people will say, well, that sounds like sunshine and rainbows, but is it real? And I think the book does make it real that, this is what we need. Can you say a little bit more to somebody who's saying like, it sounds like connections are great, but that also sounds like it's going to be a time investment piece. They're not wrong, but why should they see this time investment piece as a long vision impact, not necessarily just a short-term benefit?
Yeah. We live in an instant gratification society. So I get it. Like, we want things right now, but relationships don't happen right now. No relationship happens right now, right? Like, if you think about a marital relationship, like, you don't meet somebody and then marry them the next day. I mean, some people do, right?
Hopefully not.
And no shade to that. Like, good for you that you found your match.
It's outside the norm. Outside the norm.
Right.
By a long shot.
But a lot of people don't do that, and that's all right. And you get to know that person, and you get to know, right, your students, and you get to let the students get to know you and communities and, those relationships, the fabric of relationship. And I uplift again, like, while yes, in the time of AI and generative AI, and I don't even know what's coming up after AI, because we're going like this. Yeah. If you could see that, it's just way up horizontally. Relationships don't work like that, and they're not linear, and they're complex, right? Going back to Yuri Broffenbrenner's model, like, everybody's lived experience is going to be very different, and that's what makes it so beautiful. That's what makes it so complicated, and that's what gives us an opportunity to have conversations, to tell stories, and to share knowledge, right? Because ultimately, we're all here on the earth. We're doing a lot of the same living, if you will, and the call here is for us to think about how do we use our time just to connect with each other and share those resources, one being academics.
I just love, and I just think about, my time in the classroom. As you're talking, I'm just reflecting on my own time in the classroom, and I'm just thinking, how honored is it? And I don't know if we think about this, maybe I just don't, maybe this is a Jeff thing, but how honored are we that we get to be part of these lived experiences? For me as a 4th grade teacher, 28 children at a time in that moment in time of their lives. And I just wonder, I think educators are unique in that fact that we don't get to see that a lot. And depending on how or where you teach, I get 180 days with my fourth graders. And then I get to see them in the halls, but I don't have that impact. Somebody like Trisha, who might be an ELA teacher, and especially if Trisha was in a small district, you might see that same child 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade because you're the only ELA teacher in that district, right? Your impact might be, at a different level than even say the one moment in time that I get. But I think looking at the idea of each individual child, I love that, right? Like every individual child's lived experiences, and how do I, in the moments that I get with this child, uplift them and make those moments worthy of my classroom and worthy of my time. And sure, we need to learn how to read and we need to learn our math facts, but we also need to learn to connect with other people and we need to learn to be good humans. And at the end of the day, that's probably more important than whether or not you need to know your math facts, because I don't know if anybody else, but I got 5 calculators around me right now. I'll be okay with math.
Hi, folks. We'll get back to our conversation in just a moment. I want to talk a bit more about Neulight.io, the AI FERPA compliant, that's our federal guidelines around privacy of student data, platform making personalized student support a breeze. Student privacy is huge in our schools, and Neulight is big on privacy as well. It was one of the first questions I asked the co-founder, Jose, about. There are a few AI systems out there that meet the requirements to being FERPA compliant, and Neulight does just that. Neulight's IntelliTier platform is more than just a data collection tool. It's an AI-powered assistant that has been trained to truly understand the MTSS framework, student context, and school-specific resources. Developed by a team with both social, emotional, and behavioral needs in mind, and with plans to extend into academic support soon. Studies show effective MTSS and SEL implementations can boost attendance, improve grades, and increase graduation rates. Yet many schools struggle with the complexities of gathering data and turning that data into actionable items within the MTSS process. Neulight's IntelliTier platform makes it easy with simple, fast data collection, asynchronous collaboration across the MTSS team, and actionable insight that educators can implement and document their success with. Plus, Neulight is advised by seasoned educators and administrators, so they understand your everyday classroom challenges. You have to try it out for yourself. So head over to Neulight.io to give it a try for free. That's Neulight.io. Thank you to Neulight for taking this on, and a proud sponsor of the Shifting Schools community.
Some point, right? Yeah. At some point. So it's really interesting because one of the principles in your book is the idea of understanding context beyond compliance. Right? This is so cool. The idea of understanding context beyond compliance. Can you say more about what that means and why that is so critical in our education system?
Yeah, I think because our education system labels children, right? For funding purposes, we have these structures that say, at risk, socially, economically disadvantaged, migrant, et cetera, all these labels, and even like ethnic labels, right? Like Hispanic, and that's a whole nother podcast, but
we just lump them all in together and call it Hispanic.
Exactly. And, just to go off a quick tangent on that, like I'm Mexican, Cuban, American, like, yeah. What label does that fall in under on this US Census? And when I say understand context beyond compliance, it's really understand the nuances, right? Understand the lived experience of the child that is walking inside of your classroom. If you're at a Title I school, which there's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of Title I schools across our country, you're going to see these labels. But one person's one at-risk label is not the same as another person's at-risk label, right? Mm-hmm. Like the fact that I was at risk because I was economically disadvantaged, because I was from a one-parent household, because the zip code that I was in was economically disadvantaged. Like that is different than the student who has an incarcerated parent and who has foster child or has, different social determinants. And because they are different, we need to come up with different solutions, and we need to come up with like different ways of interacting with these little humans in our classroom. And regardless, we need to do it in a way that is very gentle and very nurturing and very loving and very assertive, if you will. But it needs to be nuanced. And the other part I would add is like to really foster inclusivity, right? When you understand context beyond compliance, you can really curate a learning experience that like ignites students' passion. Like if you're going to talk to me about, apples all day long, I'm going to probably be bored. But if you talk to me about a mango and a papaya and a coconut, like I'm going to get a little bit more excited, right? And that's just a very simple example. And so when I think about that principle, I would say it's probably a boring principle because there's so much compliance in our schools. There's so many things that are compulsory, but that's the one that I would say really lean into. You really need to understand who are the children, who are the families who are coming into your classrooms, and on the opposite end, let them understand who you are as an educator, because that's so rich as well.
I love that. And, you mentioned that you live with a dog. I also live with a dog. And I don't know what you think about this analogy, but I've been thinking about it a lot in how I feel like what you're talking about in appreciating, if you've met one neurodivergent person, you've met one neurodivergent person. It doesn't speak for all the experiences. And I think in the dog community, we get this better than we do in the human to human community because, I'll often be out for a dog walk and somebody else with a dog. Immediately you engage in that conversation of like, oh, how old is your dog? What gender is your dog? What kind of dog is, your dog? When was your dog when you got them? And even if it's like, my dog is this breed or is this age, does your dog like this? Is it okay if I pet your dog? Can I give your dog this treat or are they allergic? And I feel like people will often do I'll look for all the specifics. I'm not going to generalize. Oh, I also one time met a Dalmatian dog. Therefore, your dog must also really love chicken liver. Like we don't do that with each other's dogs. And I just wish we could sort of recognize that in one another as well. And it's that piece that I think if you've been a human on the receiving end of someone not making assumptions about you, but genuinely investing that time to get to know you, the difference it can make. And I think maybe this is an issue where how many teachers have experienced that from their colleagues? Do they have that time? Are there educational leaders making the space in that time for folks to, I'm going to see you not as my math teacher colleague, but I understand like you might not be having a great week for reasons that I don't need to know, but I appreciate you on a human level as well. Do you have any thoughts on what it means to take this concept and see it adult peer to adult peer as well?
Oh, absolutely. I had the privilege of overseeing the operations for 4 schools, had just so much joy meeting a lot of educators that supported our students and families. I saw a community being built when that was happening, right? Like you said, you don't have to know the other person's business, but you can determine if they're not having a good day by their countenance and just be really kind and say, hey, is there something I can do for you? Or without even asking them, like bring them a cup of coffee, right? And I think in the schoolhouse, because the systems that we have in play force us to like, okay, we got to go do this. We got to go do this. We don't give our educators the time and space to create social capital amongst them. Some of them do it really well, organically, but we should also, as administrators, be thinking about how can we curate experiences within the schoolhouse to let our teachers connect with one another, to also give our teachers the opportunity to connect with us as administrators, as well as with families, right? Social capital is incredibly powerful, and it doesn't have to do just with the academic part. Like it's about being human, and we go through these life experiences and we never know when we're going to need each other and for what. And so school is just a place where, you can do a lot of things and connect a lot of people.
Awesome. Marcela, thank you so much for taking time to talk with us today. Your book, Purposeful Educator Connections, is out now. You can buy it everywhere. We will have a link to it in the show notes as well. And I just pulled it up on Amazon, and the first sentence is, deepen relationships with students, stay connected to your purpose, and improve classroom culture. And I think that pretty much wraps it up for us today. If people want to follow you, want to stay connected to you, want to learn more about you, where's a good place for them to do that?
I'm on all the socials except TikTok. I'll get there soon.
It's great for dogs. It's great for dogs.
It is. I need to. It's been like a goal. And actually, I am on TikTok. I just don't have a lot of activity. But yes, you can find me on Instagram under @molcajete_talk. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find my firm page as well. And stay connected. Probably won't give my number here, but usually when I'm presenting at conferences, like I give people my number and I say like, we're all doing this together, right? We're all trying to work alongside each other to make this world a better place. And I offer my number and nobody ever calls me, but you can DM me and be like,
feel free to slide into my DMs. Right?
Yeah, slide into my DMs and say, you know what, Marcela, I'm on this mission with you to reimagine the family and community engagement model. I want to be part of what you're doing. And I would honor that and welcome that. So yeah. And then Jeff, Trisha, thank you so much again for hosting me today. It's been a joy getting to spend this morning with you.
Oh, the pleasure is ours. And listeners, we always love hearing back from you when you take us up on our book recommendations. So if you're doing a book study or this book lands on your professional development shelves, we'd love to hear all about it and the insight that it's brought to you and your community. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. I wanted to remind you not to miss out on our webinar series happening April 17th that we're calling Unlock the Power of AI for K-12 Learning. Join us for 3 engaging 45-minute webinars designed for future-facing educators like you. Can't make it live? No problem. Your ticket includes access to all the recordings. Remember to use code SSPOD25 at checkout to save $25 on registration. If you have a team of 5 or more who would like to join us, contact us for our team rate. You can learn more and register at shiftingschools.com. Hope to see you there, April 17th.